All right, let's talk about the heavyweight title fight of the AI world, Google's Gemini 3 versus OpenAI's GPT-5. It feels like every week there's a new announcement, a new model, a new claim about who's pushing the boundaries. So the big question is, right, who's the real winner here? Well, we're going to cut through all that noise and figure out how these two actually stack up when you put them to work.
But here's the thing. It isn't really about crowning one champion for everything. The real question, the one that actually matters, is which of these absolute powerhouses is the right tool for the job you have to do day in and day out. Because the answer, well, it might not be what you think.
And man, this all went down so fast. It was like a whirlwind. First, OpenAI drops GPT-5, calling it their new flagship. Before we could even catch our breath, Google comes out swinging, calling Gemini 3 its most intelligent model ever. And then, not wanting to be left behind, OpenAI immediately fires back with GPT 5.1, promising it's twice as fast. The race is definitely on.
So, here's how we're going to break this down. First, we're going to pop the hood and see how these things are actually built. Then, we'll get into performance and a kind of brains versus brawn showdown. After that, we'll throw them into a real-world gauntlet, and we'll wrap up by building your personal AI playbook. By the end, you'll know exactly which tool to grab for any job.
Okay, first stop, under the hood. Because how these models are designed, their core architecture, it tells you everything you need to know about what they're truly made for.
And right here is where you see their core philosophies just diverge completely. Gemini 3 was built from the ground up to be unified multimodal. Think of it like having one single brain that natively understands text, images, and code all at the same time. GPT 5.1, on the other hand, started its life as an absolute master of text. It's a text specialist first, and then it learned how to use other connected systems to deal with things like images. A totally different approach.
And this whole unified multimodal thing, it's the key. It means that to the AI, a line of text and a picture aren't two separate items it needs to figure out how to connect. No, from the get-go, it sees them as one single connected idea. That native integration, that's Gemini's secret sauce.
So let's see how that design choice plays out in performance. This is where we get into the numbers, the raw intelligence versus raw speed. And let me tell you, the data reveals a really clear story of brains versus brawn. Check this out. Gemini's raw intelligence is just off the charts. There's this test called Humanity's Last Exam. It's literally designed to be almost impossible for an AI to pass. Most models, they score less than 10%. But Gemini 3's special Deep Think mode scored a mind-blowing 41%. That's not just a small step up, it's a giant leap in complex reasoning. And that unified architecture we were just talking about, well, it pays off in speed big time. Especially when you're making something that combines text and images. If you're building, say, a social media post or a slide deck, Gemini 3 is a full 40% faster. In a creative workflow, that is a massive, massive advantage. But, and this is a big but, here's the other side of the coin. OpenAI put all their chips on text. So for things like analyzing a dense report, writing a long article, or churning through data pipelines, GPT 5.1 is just flat out faster. So you've got one champ for multimodal creativity and a totally different one for pure textual power.
Okay, benchmarks are cool. But what happens when the rubber meets the road? You know, when these models have to do actual jobs? Let's put them through the gauntlet and see how they handle coding, debugging, and even the boring but important stuff like availability and cost.
So I had both of them build a simple data validation script, and the results were really interesting. Gemini 3 gave me this really clean, well-structured code with helpful comments. Perfect for a team that needs to understand and maintain it later. GPT 5.1, though, it produced a more compact, more efficient, kind of clever solution. Awesome for a solo dev who just needs max efficiency. Two different styles for two different needs. Next up, I gave them a broken API to fix. Now, both found the bug, no problem. But their approaches were worlds apart. Gemini 3 was like, here's the problem, and here's a clear, step-by-step guide to fix it right now. GPT 5.1 also found the bug, but then it went a step further, suggesting big-picture architectural changes to stop that kind of bug from ever happening again. It's like one is a great mechanic, and the other is an engineer.
Now for a super practical hurdle, you can't always get the top-of-the-line version of either model.
Gemini 3's best mode, Deep Think, is stuck behind an AI Ultra subscription, and there's a waitlist. And it's a similar story for GPT 5.1. It rolls out to paying customers and businesses first. So just being able to access the best version is a real factor you have to think about.
And of course, we gotta talk about the price tag. For most of us, the consumer plans are pretty much a wash. Both are gonna run you about $20 a month. But for the developers out there using the API, this is where it gets interesting. GPT 5.1 is a little bit cheaper per million tokens, and tokens are just the little chunks of text the AI chews on. Now, it might not sound like a huge difference, but trust me, if you're pushing massive amounts of data through the system, those little cents are going to add up big time.
All right, let's get to the really useful part, building your personal AI playbook. We're going to take everything we've just learned and turn it into a super simple guide for picking the perfect model for whatever you're working on.
So, you're going to want to grab Gemini 3 when your work is all about that mix of text and visuals. If you're creating social media content, marketing materials, or presentations, anything where the words and the pictures have to work together perfectly, Gemini's speed and natural integration make it the clear winner. It's also amazing for creating really consistent, structured stuff like technical documents.
On the flip side, you'll choose GPT 5.1 when your task is all about the words. We're talking deep research, writing long articles, analyzing huge documents. Anywhere its raw text speed gives you a major edge. And for all you developers who need rock-solid, instant API access for code that's going live, GPT 5.1 is ready to roll right now.
And this all leads us to the final and honestly, the most important point of all. The real secret to getting the most out of AI isn't picking a single winner. It's about building a toolkit. You know, this gets right to the heart of a huge mistake I see people make. This idea that you have to pick a side, be Team Gemini or Team GPT, is just wrong. That's not how the pros use this stuff. It's not a sports team. Let me walk you through what a real professional workflow actually looks like. You'd start your project by using GPT 5.1 for the heavy lifting text analysis, like crunching competitor data to generate a killer outline for an article. Then, you'd switch gears and use Gemini 3 to create all the visuals, the social media posts, the custom graphics to promote that article. See? You use both models in the same project, playing to their individual strengths.
So in the end, there isn't one single winner, because you don't need one. What you need is a toolkit. And now you have the playbook to pick the right tool for the right job, every single time. So the only question left is, what's the next job you're going to give your AI?